Now it's just you and me.
In the past, she was publicly humiliated by her ex, who, with cruelty disguised as kindness, invited her to his own wedding to the woman he left her for. Now she returns, and not beside just any man. She walks in as the wife of the Mafia boss, the most powerful, feared, and dangerous man in the country.
Welcome to my library. I'm Lena, and our story is just beginning.
Chapter 1. The Entrance That Froze the Church.
Walk in with me.
The cathedral doors were heavier than I remembered, or maybe it was just the weight of everything I was about to do pressing down on my chest. My hand trembled slightly against the ornate bronze handle, and I felt his fingers cover mine, warm, steady, grounding. "You don't have to do this," Damien murmured, his voice low enough that only I could hear, his accent wrapped around the words like silk over steel. I looked up at him, 6'3" of controlled power in a perfectly tailored black suit that probably cost more than Preston's vintage car collection. Dark eyes that could freeze men with a glance watched me with something softer, something that looked almost like concern. "Yes, I do," I whispered back. His jaw tightened, but he nodded once. Final. When Damien Volkova decided something, the universe bent to accommodate him. Even now, standing outside my ex-boyfriend's wedding, his presence felt like gravity itself had shifted in his favor. "Then we walk in together," he said. Not a question, a statement. "And we make sure everyone remembers why they should have treated you better." My heart did something complicated in my chest. 3 months ago, I didn't know this man existed. Now, he was my husband, and not in some fake arrangement kind of way that rich people did for tax purposes. This was real. Terrifyingly, beautifully, impossibly real. I pushed open the doors. The effect was immediate. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned in synchronized shock. Someone gasped. I heard Georgina's mother actually choke on whatever expensive champagne they were serving. Every eye in that cathedral locked on us as we stepped into the marble-floored vestibule. The ceremony hadn't started yet. Cocktail hour was still in full swing, the elite of Manhattan society mingling in their designer best, pretending their family money made them better than everyone else. I'd been part of this world once, Preston's girlfriend, the girl who was lucky to be dating a Harrington, the one who should be grateful for the scraps of attention he threw her way. Not anymore. I adjusted my dress, a custom Valentino in deep emerald silk that hugged every curve Damien had spent the past 3 months worshipping. My hair was swept up in an elegant twist. Diamonds that once belonged to Russian royalty glittered at my throat and ears. Damien had insisted. "If we're doing this," he'd said that morning, fastening the necklace with surprising gentleness for a man rumored to have built an empire on blood and fear, "we do it right. I want them to see exactly what they lost when they underestimated you." The whispers started immediately. "Is that— It can't be— Oh my God, that's Sienna!" "Who is that with her?" "That's Damien Volkova." The last name was said with the kind of reverence usually reserved for royalty, or the kind of fear reserved for apex predators. Damien's hand found the small of my back, possessive, but not controlling. His touch said everything words couldn't. "I'm here. You're mine. Anyone who wants to hurt you goes through me first." We moved through the crowd like Moses parting the Red Sea. People actually stepped back, some out of respect, most out of pure survival instinct. I spotted them across the room. Preston, looking uncomfortable in a tuxedo that fit him perfectly, but somehow still seemed wrong. And Georgina, my former roommate from Columbia, in a wedding dress that probably cost 6 figures and still couldn't make her look like anything other than what she was. A woman who'd stolen another woman's boyfriend and thought she'd won. Our eyes met. Hers widened in shock, then narrowed in something that looked like panic. Good. She should be panicking. Preston saw me a second later. The champagne glass in his hand actually slipped, spilling expensive bubbles across his shoes. His face went through several colors: surprise, confusion, and finally settling on a pale shade of realization. He'd made a mistake. A catastrophic, irreversible mistake. And now, standing next to the most powerful man in the northeastern United States, I was living proof of exactly how badly he'd miscalculated. "Sienna," his voice cracked slightly. I didn't think you'd come," I supplied, my voice steady despite the adrenaline singing through my veins. "To celebrate your happiness? Why wouldn't I? We're all adults here, aren't we?" The subtext was clear. "I'm over you. I've moved on, and I've moved up." Georgina appeared at Preston's side, her smile brittle as expensive china. Sienna, what a surprise. Her eyes flicked to Damien, and I watched her mentally calculate his net worth, his power, his sheer presence. I don't believe we've met your friend? Husband, Damien corrected, his tone polite but with an edge that could cut glass. Damien Volkova. He didn't extend his hand. Didn't need to. His name did all the work. I watched Georgina's carefully applied makeup fail to hide the way she paled. She knew exactly who he was. Everyone in this room knew who Damien Volkova was. The man who owned half of Manhattan's real estate. The man who had connections that made politicians nervous. The man whose name appeared in Forbes and FBI files with equal frequency. The man whose ring I wore on my left hand. Congratulations, I said sweetly, looking at Preston and Georgina. I hope you'll be very happy together. The lie tasted like champagne and victory on my tongue. Preston opened his mouth, probably to say something stupid, but Damien spoke first. We should find our seats, he said, his hand never leaving my back. I'd hate to delay the ceremony. As we walked away, I heard the explosion of whispers behind us. My name, Damien's name, speculation and shock, and the delicious sound of my past being rewritten in real time. You're smiling, Damien observed quietly as we took our seats in the third row, close enough to be seen, far enough to maintain dignity. Am I? Dangerously. His fingers found mine, threading together in a gesture that was becoming familiar. Comfortable. Right. Enjoying yourself? Is that wrong? Not at all. His thumb traced circles on my palm, and despite everything, the crowd, the ceremony about to start, the ex-boyfriend probably having a breakdown somewhere, all I could focus on was that simple touch. I'd be disappointed if you weren't. The organ music started. Everyone stood. Georgina began her processional down the aisle in a dress that probably cost more than my entire college education. As she passed our row, our eyes met again, and in that moment, I saw it clearly. She knew. She knew she'd won the battle, but lost the war. Preston was rich. Preston was connected. Preston was everything a woman like Georgina had been raised to want. But he wasn't Damien. And I wasn't the same girl who'd begged Preston to love her 3 years ago. I was Sienna Volkova now, and that changed everything. Chapter 2. The Fall.
I've got you.
The ceremony was beautiful in that obscene way only old money could achieve. Thousands of white roses and a string quartet playing something classical and expensive, light filtering through stained glass windows that had witnessed a century of society weddings. I should have been watching the bride and groom. Instead, I was drowning in memories I'd spent 3 years trying to forget. Damien's hand tightened on mine, and I realized I'd tensed. He didn't ask what was wrong, he just knew. Somehow this man who'd known me for only 3 months understood my triggers better than people who'd known me my whole life. Breathe, he murmured, so quietly only I could hear. I did, and let myself remember. 3 years ago. You're wearing that? Preston's voice had that tone, the one that sounded like a question, but was really a judgment wrapped in silk and condescension. I looked down at my dress, a simple black cocktail dress I'd saved up for. Not designer, but nice. I thought I looked good. What's wrong with it? I asked, already feeling my confidence crumbling. Nothing, it's just... He circled me like I was a sculpture he was evaluating. It's a little tight, don't you think? Especially around the middle. My stomach dropped. I thought it fit well. It did. Last month. His smile was practiced. Perfect. Cruel. Have you been eating more? You know how I feel about you maintaining your figure, Sienna. Image matters in my world. His world, like I was just visiting. Just a guest who needed to follow the house rules. I'd changed that night, put on something looser, something that made me disappear into the background while Preston shined at whatever gala we were attending. It was always like that, him shining, me disappearing. You're so lucky, Georgina had said one night, sprawled on her bed in our shared dorm room. We were seniors at Columbia. She was majoring in art history and rich husbands. I was majoring in literature and delusion. Preston Harrington III? Do you know how many girls would kill to date him? I know, I'd said, because that's what you were supposed to say. You were supposed to be grateful, supposed to recognize your good fortune in being chosen by someone like him. Just don't mess it up, okay? She'd laughed, but there was something sharp underneath. Girls like us don't get many chances with guys like him. Girls like us, as if we were the same, as if her trust fund and my scholarships put us in the same category. I should have seen it then. The way she looked at him, the way she laughed too hard at his jokes, the way she always seemed to be around when he came to pick me up. But I was too busy trying to be perfect, trying to be thin enough, quiet enough, undemanding enough, trying to be worthy of Preston Harrington III. 2 years ago. Where were you? Preston's text came through at 2 a.m. I'd been at the library working on my thesis. I'd told him that morning. He'd said fine and gone back to his phone. Library, like I said, finishing my chapter. Funny, I drove by, didn't see your car. My blood went cold. He'd checked on me, driven to the library to verify my location like I was some kind of criminal on probation. I parked in the back lot. It was full in front. Send me a picture. What? Of where you are now. I'd done it, taken a selfie in the library, my laptop visible, the timestamp clear, sent it to him like evidence in my own trial. Okay, just checking. Can't be too careful. You know how guys are around pretty girls. I should have been flattered. That's what I told myself. He cared. He was protective. It was romantic. It was a cage. 18 months ago. The party was at the Harrington estate, Preston's father's birthday. Everyone who was anyone in Manhattan society was there. I'd worn the dress Preston approved, done my makeup exactly how he liked, stayed by his side like a well-trained accessory. Sienna's thinking about graduate school, Preston announced to a group of his father's business associates, his tone amused, indulgent. Wants to get her Ph.D. in literature. Can you imagine? The men laughed, like my dreams were a punchline. What would you do with that, sweetheart? One of them asked. Teach? I want to write, I said quietly. Maybe teach, yes, but mostly write. Write what? Romance novels? More laughter. Preston's loudest of all. Academic work, I said, my cheeks burning. Literary criticism, maybe? She's adorable. Preston cut me off, squeezing my waist in what would look affectionate to anyone watching, but felt like a warning. Always has these big dreams. I keep telling her, once we're married, she won't need to work. She can do whatever little projects she wants as a hobby. Little projects, my life's work, my passion, reduced to a hobby. Something to keep me occupied while he built empires. I'd smiled, nodded, played along, because that's what you did when you were lucky enough to be dating Preston Harrington III 1 year ago. I found out about the affair the way everyone finds out about affairs in the digital age. A text message meant for someone else. Preston. Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear the red lingerie I bought you. Me. What red lingerie? The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Preston. Wrong person. That was for a surprise I'm planning. For you. I wasn't stupid. Naive, maybe. Desperate to believe in love, definitely, but not stupid. I'd checked his phone that night while he showered. Found months of messages, photos, hotel reservations, and the name that appeared most frequently, Georgina. My roommate, my friend, the girl who'd cried on my shoulder about her own breakups, who'd helped me pick out outfits for dates, who'd told me how lucky I was. She'd been sleeping with my boyfriend for 6 months, 10 months ago. I confronted them at a charity gala, maybe not my smartest move, but I was done with private humiliations. I know, I'd said simply, walking up to where Preston and Georgina stood by the bar. Close, too close. I know everything. Preston's face had gone through a fascinating series of emotions, surprise, annoyance, and finally something that looked almost like relief. Sienna, he'd started, but I held up my hand. Don't, just don't. I looked at Georgina. You knew. From the beginning, you knew how I felt about him. Oh, sweetie. Her voice dripped with false sympathy. Did you really think someone like Preston would end up with someone like you? Long term? The words hit like a physical blow. You were a phase, she continued, and I could see people starting to notice our conversation, starting to listen. He wanted to rebel a bit, date the scholarship girl, feel like a good person for slumming it, but we all knew, everyone knew, he'd end up with someone from his own world eventually. Georgina, Preston tried to intervene, but she was on a roll. You were never going to be Mrs. Harrington. You don't have the right family, the right connections, the right anything, really. She smiled, and it was the cruelest thing I'd ever seen. You were practice. I'm the real thing. The room had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now, watching me fall apart in public, watching the scholarship girl get put in her place. Preston didn't defend me, didn't say a word. He just stood there looking uncomfortable, like I was making a scene, like I was the problem. She's right, he finally said, his voice carrying in the awful silence. I'm sorry, Sienna, but us, it was never going to be forever. I thought you understood that. I'd left, run, really, out of the gala into the street, my vision blurred with tears and humiliation. Some friends had followed, offered comfort, but more didn't. More chose Preston and Georgina and their world over me. chose the side that wouldn't rock the boat or threaten their own social standing. Within a week half, my friend group had ghosted me. Invitations dried up. People I'd known for years suddenly didn't return my calls. I'd been erased from their world as efficiently as you'd delete a file. Present. Sienna. Damien's voice pulled me back to the present, to the cathedral, to the ceremony happening in front of us. I'm here, I whispered. I know. His thumb traced my knuckles. But you were somewhere else. Somewhere that hurt. The priest was asking if anyone objected to the union, the traditional moment of drama that never actually happened in real life. Damien leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. Say the word. We can leave. You don't owe them your presence. But I did. Not for them. For me. Because sitting here in this cathedral, wearing diamonds and Valentino and the wedding ring of the most powerful man in the state, I was proof. Proof that Georgina had been wrong, that I wasn't just practice, that I wasn't forgettable or disposable, or less than I was Sienna Volkova, and I'd risen from the ashes of that humiliation like a phoenix wrapped in silk and danger. I'm staying, I said quietly. Damien studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. Then we stay together. Together? Such a simple word, but coming from him it meant everything. Because Damien hadn't just married me, he'd chosen me, seen me, valued me. Everything Preston had pretended to do, Damien actually did. The ceremony continued. Vows were exchanged, rings were placed. The priest pronounced them husband and wife. And as Preston kissed Georgina, as the crowd applauded, as everyone celebrated the union of two people who deserved each other in the worst possible way, I felt something unexpected. Peace. I didn't want him back, didn't want revenge, didn't even want an apology. I just wanted him to see, to really see, what he'd thrown away. And judging by the way his eyes kept drifting to where Damien's hand rested possessively on my thigh, the way his smile looked forced, the way Georgina kept glancing over with barely concealed envy, mission accomplished. Chapter 3. The Man Beside Me.
Stay behind me.
The reception was held in the Harrington Estates ballroom, a space so excessively elegant it felt like stepping into a European palace. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from hand-painted ceilings, and every surface gleamed with the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already knew. Damien's hand never left the small of my back as we navigated through the crowd. His touch was light but possessive, not in the suffocating way Preston used to be, but in a way that said, I'm here. I choose to be here, and I'm not going anywhere. People parted for us like we were royalty, or maybe like we were something more dangerous than royalty, something that could actually hurt them. Mr. Volkova, a older gentleman approached, his smile nervous, despite his obvious wealth. What a pleasant surprise to see you here. Mr. Whitmore? Damien's voice was smooth, polite, but there was steel underneath, the kind of steel that made powerful men remember their place. Congratulations on your merger. I hear it went through despite the complications. The man's face went slightly pale, like Damien had just referenced something he shouldn't know about, something private. Yes, well, thank you for your discretion in that matter. Of course. Damien's smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm always discreet with my associates. Associates, the word hung in the air like a threat wrapped in velvet. Mr. Whitmore excused himself quickly, practically fleeing across the ballroom. You enjoy that, I murmured, fighting a smile. Making them nervous. I enjoy keeping them honest, he corrected, his thumb tracing circles on my hip in a way that made concentrating difficult. There's a difference. A waiter passed with champagne. Damien took 2 glasses with the kind of easy grace that came from a lifetime of moving through spaces like this. Except, unlike everyone else here who'd been born into this world, Damien had built his empire from nothing, clawed his way up from the streets of Moscow to the penthouses of Manhattan, and he'd done it by being smarter, more ruthless, and infinitely more dangerous than anyone who'd tried to stop him. Tell me what you're thinking, he said quietly, handing me a glass. Our fingers brushed, and even that simple touch sent electricity up my arm. I'm thinking about how different this is, I admitted, taking a sip of champagne that probably cost more than my monthly rent used to. Being here with you instead of before. His jaw tightened slightly, the only sign that my words affected him. Tell me about before. You already know before. I told you everything that night in Santorini. Tell me again. His voice dropped lower, more intimate despite the crowd around us. I want to hear it now, here, so I can appreciate exactly how far you've come. 6 months ago. Santorini. I'd gone to Greece to forget, to escape, to piece myself back together after the gala incident had shattered me into a million humiliated pieces, I'd used the last of my savings, booked a tiny room in a whitewashed villa overlooking the Aegean, and spent my days reading on secluded beaches where no one knew my name or my shame. That's where I'd first seen him, this impossibly attractive man sitting alone at a beachside taverna, looking simultaneously bored and dangerous in white linen and dark sunglasses. A woman across from him was talking rapidly, gesturing with her hands, clearly trying very hard to impress him. He looked like he wanted to throw himself off the cliff just to escape. Our eyes met across the patio, and something passed between us. Recognition, maybe, or just the universal language of, "Please save me from this terrible situation." I didn't think, just acted. I walked over to their table with my book still in hand and smiled brightly. "Dimitri, there you are. I've been looking everywhere for you." The woman stopped mid-sentence, her perfectly glossed lips forming a small O of surprise. The man, Damien, though I didn't know his name yet, didn't miss a beat. "Malaya," he said, the Russian endearment rolling off his tongue like honey and smoke. "I was just explaining to Miss Katerina," the woman supplied, looking between us with growing suspicion. "Miss Katerina, that I was waiting for someone." He stood smoothly, all 6'3" of controlled power unfolding from the chair. He held out his hand to me. "Shall we?" I took it. His palm was warm and calloused, not the soft hands of someone who'd never worked, but the hands of someone who'd fought for everything he had. We walked away from the taverna together, his hand still holding mine, and I could feel Katerina's furious stare burning into my back. "Thank you," he said once we were out of earshot. His accent was subtle, but definitely there. Russian or Ukrainian, maybe. "That woman has been following me since Athens." "Happy to help," I said, suddenly very aware that I was holding hands with a complete stranger who looked like he could break me in half without breaking a sweat. "I'm Sienna." "Damien," he didn't let go of my hand, "and now that you've saved me from a terrible lunch date, the least I can do is buy you dinner." I should have said no, should have been smart and safe and walked away, but something in his dark eyes made me want to be reckless. Dinner sounds good. That dinner turned into drinks, which turned into walking along the beach as the sun set over the caldera, which turned into talking until 3 a.m. about everything and nothing. I told him about my life, about Preston, about the humiliation, about feeling like I'd been erased from my own existence. He listened with an intensity that made me feel seen for the first time in years. "He's a fool," Damien had said finally. We were sitting on the sand by then, the waves lapping at our feet, the moon bright overhead. "Anyone who made you feel less than extraordinary is a fool." "You don't know me," I'd protested weakly. I could be terrible. "You saved me from a bad date using nothing but confidence and a paperback novel." His smile was devastating in the moonlight. "You're many things, Sienna, but terrible isn't one of them." We spent the next 2 weeks together. Every day was an adventure. He took me to private beaches accessible only by boat, to restaurants that didn't have signs, because if you needed a sign, you didn't belong there, to ancient ruins where we were the only people for miles, and every night we talked, sharing secrets and dreams and fears like we'd known each other for years instead of days. "What do you do?" I'd asked one night. We were in his villa, which was significantly nicer than my budget accommodation, drinking wine on his terrace. "For work, I mean." "I acquire things," he'd said carefully. "Businesses, properties, sometimes opportunities." "That's vague." "It's meant to be." His eyes held mine. "I operate in spaces that aren't always strictly legal, Sienna. I'm not a good man by most definitions." "Are you a dangerous man?" "Very." He didn't flinch from the truth. "I've done things that would horrify you. I've hurt people who threatened what's mine. I've built an empire on fear and money and carefully calculated risks." I should have run, should have been terrified. Instead, I leaned closer. "And yet you've been nothing but kind to me." "Because you're different." His hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing my cheekbone with surprising gentleness. "Because when I look at you, I don't see an opportunity or a risk. I see someone real. Someone who yelled at bad dates and reads books on the beach and doesn't care that I could buy this entire island if I wanted to." "Could you buy the island?" "Probably," he smiled. "Would you like me to?" "God, no," I laughed. "I like that it doesn't belong to anyone. That's why I like you." He'd pulled me closer, his forehead resting against mine. "You don't want me to own things for you. You just want me to be present with you." On our last night in Santorini, we'd stayed up watching the sunrise from his terrace, wrapped in blankets and each other, and he'd asked the question that changed everything. "Come back to New York with me." "Damien, I know it's fast. I know it's insane, but I can't. He'd stopped, searching for words. I can't let you go back to that life where people made you feel small. Stay with me. Let me show you what it's like to be with someone who sees your value. As what? Your girlfriend? As my wife. He'd said it so simply, like he was suggesting dinner instead of marriage. Marry me, Sienna. Not because I want to own you or control you, but because in 2 weeks, you've become the most important person in my world, and I don't want to spend another day without you. That's insane. Completely, he'd agreed. But I've built everything I have by taking calculated risks, and you, Malaya, are the best risk I've ever considered taking. I'd said yes, not because I was running from Preston, not because I wanted Damien's money or power, but because for the first time in my life, someone was offering me a partnership instead of a cage, freedom instead of control, choice instead of obligation. We'd gotten married 3 days later in a small chapel overlooking the sea, just us and 2 witnesses pulled from a nearby cafe. And when he'd slipped the ring on my finger, a vintage Russian diamond that had belonged to his grandmother, I'd felt something shift inside me, like I was finally becoming the person I was always meant to be. Present. You're smiling again, Damien observed, pulling me back to the reception, to the ballroom full of people who were trying very hard not to stare at us. I was remembering Santorini, I said softly, remembering how you proposed in terrible Greek while slightly drunk on wine. My Greek was perfect, he protested, but his eyes were warm with the memory. You're the one who laughed so hard, you nearly fell off the terrace. Because you called me your beautiful potato instead of beautiful love. A minor linguistic error. You literally asked me to marry your potato. His laugh was low and genuine, the kind of laugh he only ever gave me, and I watched several women across the room actually turn to stare, because Damien Volkova laughing was apparently an event worth witnessing. Sienna! The voice made my entire body tense. Preston stood a few feet away, Georgina conspicuously absent. His bow tie was slightly crooked, and there was a sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the air conditioning. Can we talk? Privately? Damien's hand tightened infinitesimally on my waist, not controlling but present, letting me know he was there if I needed him. Anything you need to say to my wife, you can say in front of me. Damien's voice was pleasant, polite even, but there was an undercurrent that made Preston take an involuntary step back. I just wanted to... Preston's eyes flicked between us, landing on where Damien's hand rested on my hip, on the wedding ring that caught the light, on the way I leaned slightly into Damien's solid presence. I wanted to apologize for how things ended between us. I was young and stupid, and I didn't appreciate what I had. You're apologizing, I said slowly, trying to process this. At your wedding, you're apologizing for how you treated me. I made a mistake, he said, and he actually looked like he meant it. Seeing you here, seeing you with him, I realize that you chose wrong. Damien's voice cut through whatever Preston was about to say. It wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. Every word landed with the precision of a thrown knife. That you had someone extraordinary and you treated her like she was disposable. That you let her walk away. No, that you drove her away. And now you're realizing she was the best thing that ever happened to you? Preston's face went red, then white. Let me make something very clear, Damien continued, his tone never rising but somehow filling the space around us with menace. Sienna is mine now, not because I own her, but because she chose me, and every single day I work to be worthy of that choice. I see her brilliance, her strength, her value, and I make sure she knows it, something you were apparently incapable of doing. I never meant to... You meant every word, I said quietly, finding my voice. Every criticism, every comparison, every time you made me feel like I wasn't enough, you meant it. You wanted me small and grateful and easy to control. That's not... It is. I met his eyes steadily. And the truth is, Preston, I should thank you. He blinked, clearly not expecting that. Because if you hadn't been exactly who you were, if you hadn't shown me what I didn't want in a partner, I might never have recognized what I did want when I found it. I gestured slightly to Damien. So thank you for being such a spectacular failure as a boyfriend that you made it impossible for me to settle for anything less than extraordinary ever again. Preston opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again like a fish gasping for air. Congratulations on your marriage, Damien said smoothly, his hand moving from my waist to thread his fingers through mine. I hope you and your bride find whatever happiness you deserve. The subtext was clear, which isn't very much. We walked away, leaving Preston standing alone in the middle of the ballroom, and I could feel the eyes following us, the whispers starting, the social calculus being recalculated as everyone processed what they'd just witnessed. "You okay?" Damien asked once we were out of earshot. "I'm perfect," and I meant it, because standing here in this ballroom where I'd once felt so small, with this powerful, dangerous, surprisingly gentle man at my side, I felt invincible. "Can we leave now? We can do whatever you want." He brought my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that sent heat racing through my veins. "Though I have one more thing to do first." "What's that?" His smile was wicked. "Dance with my wife where everyone can see." Chapter 4, The Reversal.
Let them watch.
The band started playing something slow and elegant, one of those classic jazz standards that rich people loved because it made them feel cultured. Damien led me to the dance floor with the kind of confidence that came from knowing every eye in the room would follow. His hand settled on my waist, the other capturing mine, and suddenly we were moving, swaying to music that felt like it was written specifically for this moment, for us. "You're good at this," I murmured, hyper-aware of how close we were, how his body moved against mine with practiced ease. "I'm good at many things." His voice was low, meant only for me, his breath warm against my ear. "Dancing is probably the most innocent of them." Heat pooled in my stomach at the implication. "Damien? Sienna?" He mimicked my tone, amusement dancing in his dark eyes. "What? I'm simply stating facts. You're trying to make me blush in front of 300 people." "I'm succeeding." He pulled me infinitesimally closer, the movement so subtle that to anyone watching we still looked perfectly proper, but I could feel every line of his body against mine now, solid and warm and entirely too distracting. "You're beautiful when you blush." "You're impossible." "You've mentioned that before." His thumb traced small circles on my lower back, the touch burning through the silk of my dress. "Usually, right before you kiss me." He wasn't wrong, and we both knew it. There was something about his particular brand of arrogance that should have been infuriating, but instead made me want to pull him down and kiss him senseless in front of everyone here. The song shifted, transitioning into something slightly more upbeat, and I became aware of the other couples joining us on the dance floor, including Preston and Georgina, who positioned themselves close enough to make conversation inevitable. "Sienna?" Georgina's voice was sugar-sweet and equally toxic. "That dress is stunning, Valentino." "Yes." I kept my tone neutral, polite, giving her nothing to work with. "I almost wore something similar." She gestured to her wedding gown, which probably cost enough to fund a small country. "But I decided to go more traditional. You know how important appearances are at these events." The implication was clear. I wasn't traditional enough, wasn't appropriate for this world, was trying too hard. Damien's hand tightened on my waist, a silent message that he heard it too, that he was ready to intervene if I needed him to, but I didn't need saving, not anymore. "Traditional is certainly a choice," I said pleasantly, though personally, I've always believed that true confidence comes from wearing what makes you feel powerful, regardless of what others might consider appropriate. Georgina's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course, when you have the right support system, I suppose you can get away with anything." "Support system," Damien's voice cut in, smooth as aged whiskey and twice as dangerous. "Is that what we're calling marriage now? How modern of you." Preston had the good sense to look uncomfortable. His hand on Georgina's waist looked more like an obligation than a choice. Nothing like the way Damien touched me, like he couldn't imagine being anywhere else. "I didn't mean," Georgina started, but the music swelled, and the moment passed. Other couples shifted, and suddenly we were on opposite sides of the dance floor. "She's jealous," I observed quietly. "Of course she is." Damien spun me smoothly, the movement making my dress flare slightly. "She thought she won when she took Preston, but now she's realizing she traded down while you traded up exponentially. That's arrogant." "That's factual." He dipped me slightly, and I gasped at the unexpected movement, at the way his face was suddenly inches from mine, at the heat in his eyes that had nothing to do with the crowded ballroom. "She got a trust fund baby who needs his father's approval to buy a car, you got me." "And you're so much better," I challenged, even as my heart raced. "I'm dangerous, morally complicated, and probably going to hell." He pulled me back up, our bodies flush against each other now. "But I'm also completely devoted to you, infinitely more interesting, and I actually know how to make you smile, so yes, Malaya, I'm substantially better." I couldn't argue with that logic, mainly because he chose that moment to kiss me, right there in the middle of the dance floor, in front of everyone who'd once made me feel small. It wasn't a long kiss, nothing inappropriate for the setting, but it was thorough and claiming and absolutely devastating. When he pulled back, I was breathless, and the entire room had gone quiet. "Was that necessary?" I whispered. "Completely," he smiled against my temple. "I wanted to make sure everyone here knows exactly who you belong to. I don't belong to anyone." "You're right." His arms tightened around me. "Let me rephrase. I wanted everyone to know exactly who chose you, who values you, who would burn this entire ballroom down if anyone tried to hurt you again." The intensity in his voice sent shivers down my spine. This was the real Damien, the dangerous one, the one who'd built an empire on calculated violence and strategic fear, and he was looking at me like I was the only thing in the world worth protecting. The song ended, applause rippled through the crowd, and we separated reluctantly. Damien kept my hand in his as we moved toward the edge of the dance floor, toward the bar where servers were distributing more champagne. That's when it happened. Georgina appeared beside us with a champagne flute in hand. Her smile was bright and fake as she moved closer, ostensibly to congratulate someone passing by, but her trajectory was directly toward me. "Oh!" she exclaimed, and suddenly champagne was everywhere. The entire glass had somehow accidentally dumped directly onto my dress, the emerald silk immediately darkening with the liquid. Champagne dripped down the bodice, soaked into the fabric, ruined the custom embroidery. "Oh my God, Sienna, I'm so sorry." Georgina's voice was pitched loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Her hand flew to her mouth in exaggerated horror. "I didn't see you there. I'm such a klutz." The lie was obvious. I'd seen her eyes right before it happened, seen the calculation, the deliberate aim. This wasn't an accident, it was sabotage. A final petty attempt to embarrass me at her own wedding. "It's fine," I started to say, already reaching for napkins, already planning how to salvage this. But Damien's hand on my wrist stopped me. "No." His voice was quiet but absolute. "It's not fine." He pulled out his phone, didn't even look at Georgina as he dialed. His eyes were locked on mine, dark and furious, and something else, something protective and possessive that made my breath catch. "Victor," he said into the phone, his Russian accent more pronounced now, "I need a dress. The Dior boutique on 5th. Have them bring everything in Sienna's size. Green, preferably. Darker than what she's wearing now. I want it here, in 20 minutes. I don't care if they're closed, make it happen." He hung up, slipped the phone back into his pocket, and only then did he turn to look at Georgina. The temperature in the immediate area seemed to drop 10 degrees. "That was quite clumsy of you," he said pleasantly, but there was nothing pleasant in his eyes. "I'm sure you didn't mean to deliberately throw champagne on my wife's custom Valentino at your own wedding reception." It was an accident," Georgina stammered, and I watched the color drain from her face as she realized what she'd done, who she'd antagonized. "Of course." Damien's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "Just like it was an accident when you slept with her boyfriend, an accident when you humiliated her publicly, an accident when you've spent the past year gloating about stealing something that wasn't worth keeping." The people around us had gone silent. Everyone was listening now. Everyone was watching Georgina's perfect wedding implode in real time. "Damien," I started, putting a hand on his arm, not because I wanted him to stop, but because the rage radiating from him was almost tangible. 15 minutes, he said, checking his watch, his hand covering mine on his arm. "That's how long it's going to take for a dress that costs more than this entire reception to arrive. And then my wife is going to change into something even more beautiful than what you just ruined." "I'll pay for the cleaning," Georgina tried. "You couldn't afford the cleaning," Damien cut her off. "That dress was custom, one of 3 made by Valentino this year. The fabric alone costs more than your wedding gown, so no. You won't be paying for anything. You'll be living with the knowledge that you're exactly the kind of petty, insecure woman who peaks in her 20s and spends the rest of her life wondering what happened." "Damien," Preston stepped forward, trying to play the protective husband, trying to salvage his bride's dignity. "That's enough." "No." Damien turned that cold gaze on Preston. "Enough was 10 months ago when you let her humiliate Sienna at a charity gala. Enough was when you made her feel like she wasn't good enough for your world. Enough was every single time you took someone extraordinary and made her feel ordinary." He pulled me closer, his arm around my waist, protective and possessive. This is just the beginning of consequences." A commotion at the ballroom entrance made everyone turn. A woman in a sleek black suit was walking toward us, carrying what looked like a wardrobe bag. She was flanked by 2 security guards and moved with the efficiency of someone who'd been promised a very large commission. Mr. Volkova, she said breathlessly, arriving in less than the promised 20 minutes. I brought several options as requested. Show me, Damien commanded, and she unzipped the bag to reveal 3 dresses, each more stunning than the last. He examined them with the same focus he probably used to evaluate business deals, finally selecting a deep forest green number that looked like liquid emerald. It was Dior, probably worth a small fortune, and definitely more spectacular than my ruined Valentino. This one, he handed it to me. Go change. I'll wait here. You don't have to, Sienna. His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheek, and despite the audience, despite everything, I leaned into the touch. Let me do this. Let me show everyone here what it looks like when someone actually values you. I took the dress and headed toward the bathroom, aware of the whispers following me, the shocked faces, the way Georgina looked like she might cry. In the ornate bathroom, I changed quickly. The new dress fit perfectly, hugging curves and highlighting assets in a way that was elegant but undeniably sexy. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. This wasn't the girl who'd begged Preston for scraps of affection. This wasn't the woman who'd been humiliated at a gala. This was Sienna Volkova, wife of the most powerful man in the state, and I looked the part. When I walked back into the ballroom, conversation stopped again, but this time it wasn't shock. It was something else, something like awe. Damien was waiting exactly where I'd left him. His eyes tracked my movement across the room, dark and heated and full of promises for later. When I reached him, he didn't say anything, just pulled me close and kissed me again, deeper this time, longer, the kind of kiss that made people look away or stare depending on their level of propriety. Perfect, he murmured against my lips. You're absolutely perfect. Georgina stood a few feet away, her own wedding dress suddenly looking overdone and trying too hard. Her face was blotchy with barely contained tears. Preston had his arm around her, but he was looking at me, looking at what he'd lost, looking at what he'd never actually appreciated. I think, Damien said loud enough for nearby people to hear, that we should send the bride a thank you gift. For what? I asked, playing along. For reminding me that my wife looks stunning in everything, even champagne-soaked Valentino. His smile was dangerous and beautiful, though she looks better in Dior. The laughter that rippled through the crowd was at Georgina's expense, and I watched her face crumble, watched Preston try to comfort her, watched their perfect wedding become the event where Sienna Volkova, proved that she'd not only survived their cruelty, but transcended it entirely. Can we leave now? I whispered to Damien. We can do whatever you want, he said, exactly like he had before, though I'm enjoying watching them realize what they lost. I think they know. I glanced at Preston and Georgina, both looking miserable despite being surrounded by luxury. And honestly, I don't care anymore. I just want to go home with my husband and forget they exist. Something shifted in Damien's expression, something soft and genuine that he rarely showed in public. Home sounds perfect. We left the reception without saying goodbye to anyone, walked out of the Harrington estate with our heads high and our hands intertwined, and as the valet brought Damien's car around, I realized something profound. I'd come here thinking I needed closure, thinking I needed to prove something, but standing here in a borrowed Dior dress with champagne still drying in my hair, I realized I didn't need any of that. I just needed this man, this life, this choice to value myself enough to walk away from people who never deserved me in the first place. What are you thinking? Damien asked as we drove away from the estate, from Preston, from that entire life. I'm thinking that I should thank Georgina, I said honestly, because if she hadn't been exactly who she was, I might have stayed. I might have married Preston and spent my whole life feeling not quite good enough. And now I know exactly what good enough feels like. I reached for his hand, threading our fingers together. It feels like this. His grip tightened, and in the darkness of the car, I saw him smile, really smile, the kind of smile he only ever gave me. Te amo, Milaya, he said softly, the Spanish and Russian mixing in a way that was entirely him, entirely ours. I love you too, I whispered back, and meant it with every fiber of my being. Chapter 5. The Conversation.
Tell me what you feel.
The drive home was quiet in that comfortable way that only happens when you're with someone who doesn't need constant noise to fill the silence. Damien's hand rested on my thigh, his thumb tracing absent patterns through the silk of my borrowed Dior dress, and I watched the city lights blur past the window, feeling like I was finally exhaling after holding my breath for years. Talk to me, he said eventually, his voice low and intimate in the darkness of the car. What's going on in that beautiful head of yours? I turned to look at him. His profile was sharp and perfect in the passing streetlights, all strong jaw and straight nose and those dangerously dark eyes that saw too much. I'm trying to figure out what I'm feeling. And relief? I said honestly. But also, I don't know, emptiness maybe, like I built up this moment in my head for so long, and now that it's over, I'm not sure what to do with all that energy. He was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he surprised me by pulling the car over. We were somewhere in Manhattan, a quiet street lined with brownstones and old money. He put the car in park and turned to face me fully. "You didn't go there for revenge," he said, and it wasn't a question. "No," I admitted. "I thought I did. I thought I wanted to rub my new life in their faces, make them see what they lost, but when I was actually there, standing in that cathedral, all I felt was free. Free from what? From caring what they thought." I reached for his hand, needing the contact, needing the grounding presence of him, from feeling like I needed their validation or approval or even their regret. I just needed to see them and realize that I'd moved past them completely. His fingers threaded through mine, strong and warm and steady. "You never needed to prove anything to them. You know that, right?" "Logically, yes," I smiled ruefully. "Emotionally, that's harder to accept." "Sienna," he pulled my hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to my knuckles that sent heat racing up my arm. "You are extraordinary. You always were. Preston was too blind and stupid to see it. Georgina was too insecure to acknowledge it, but it was always there." "You barely know me," I protested, even though my heart was doing acrobatics in my chest. 3 months. "I know that you save strangers from bad dates even when you're heartbroken yourself," he interrupted. "I know that you read philosophy on beaches and cry at sunsets and laugh at terrible Greek puns. I know that you're brilliant and kind and stronger than you give yourself credit for. Damien, I know that when I'm with you, I feel like less of a monster." His voice dropped lower, more vulnerable. "Like maybe all the terrible things I've done, all the lines I've crossed, maybe they were worth it because they led me to you." My breath caught. This was the Damien that nobody else got to see, the one underneath the dangerous reputation and the ruthless business practices, the man who was capable of devastating gentleness. "You're not a monster," I said firmly. "I've killed people, Malaya," he said it matter-of-factly, like he was commenting on the weather. "I've destroyed lives, ruined businesses, made decisions that kept me up at night with guilt. I'm not a good man." "You're a complicated man," I corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." I shifted closer, my hand coming up to cup his face, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw, the warmth of his skin. "Good and bad are too simple for what you are. You're protective and dangerous, generous and ruthless, capable of incredible violence and incredible tenderness." His hand covered mine on his face, pressing it closer. "You see me clearer than anyone ever has." "You let me," I pointed out. "You don't hide from me." "I can't," he admitted. "I tried. That first week in Santorini, I tried to keep my distance, maintain the walls I've built around myself. But you walked right through them like they were made of paper." "Good." I leaned in, my lips brushing his. "I like you without the walls." He kissed me then, and it was different from the kisses at the reception. Those had been about possession and claiming, about showing everyone who I belonged with. This was about connection, about two people who'd found each other against all odds and decided to build something real from the wreckage of their pasts. His hand slid into my hair, the other pulling me closer despite the awkward angle in the car. I climbed over the center console without breaking the kiss, straddling his lap in a way that made my borrowed dress ride up dangerously high. "Sienna," he groaned against my mouth, his hands gripping my hips. "We're on a public street." "Then drive us home," I murmured, kissing along his jaw, down his neck, tasting the salt and expensive cologne and something uniquely him. "Christo," he breathed, his accent thicker now. "You're going to kill me." "What a way to go." I threw his own words from earlier back at him and felt him laugh against my skin. He did drive us home, though he broke several traffic laws doing it. His hand stayed high on my thigh the entire way, a constant reminder of what was waiting when we got there. And by the time we pulled into the underground garage of our penthouse, I was trembling with anticipation. The elevator ride up was an exercise in restraint. Damien kept me pressed against the wall, his body a solid line of heat against mine, his lips tracing patterns on my neck that made coherent thought impossible. "I love you," he said against my skin, and the words sent shivers down my spine. I love you too, I gasped, as his teeth grazed my pulse point. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse, and we stumbled inside, still tangled in each other. I vaguely registered the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, the modern furniture that cost more than most people's cars, the art on the walls that belonged in museums. But mostly I registered him, the way his hands felt on my body, the way he looked at me like I was something precious and corrupting all at once, the way he made me feel powerful and desired and completely safe despite knowing exactly how dangerous he could be. Bedroom, I managed to say between kisses. Damien, bedroom. Impatient, he teased, but he was already moving us in that direction, walking backwards while I clung to him, trusting him not to let me fall. You started this in the car, I reminded him, my hands working the buttons of his shirt, desperate to feel skin. You climbed into my lap in a dress that's basically sin wrapped in silk, he countered, his hands finding the zipper of said dress. You started this the moment you walked out of that bathroom looking like every fantasy I've ever had. The dress pooled at my feet, and I stood there in just my underwear and heels, watching his eyes go dark with want, with need, with something that looked almost like reverence. Beautiful, he breathed, his hands skimming up my sides. You're so beautiful it hurts to look at you. Then stop looking, I challenged, reaching for his belt. And start touching. He did, and the world narrowed to just sensation, just feeling, just the two of us tangled together in expensive sheets while the city sparkled below, oblivious to the way we were rewriting each other's stories, healing old wounds with new touches, building something permanent from the temporary insanity of a Greek island romance. Much later, I woke up wrapped in Damien's arms, the sheets tangled around our legs, early morning light filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. For a moment I just lay there, listening to his steady breathing, feeling the rise and fall of his chest against my back, marveling at how different this was from what I'd had before. Preston had never held me like this, like I was something worth keeping close, like he couldn't bear to let me go even in sleep. You're thinking too loud. Damien's voice was rough with sleep, his arms tightening around me. I can feel you overthinking from here. Sorry. I turned in his arms to face him. His hair was messy, his jaw shadowed with stubble. He looked younger like this, less dangerous, more human. I was just comparing. Don't, he said firmly. Don't compare what we have to what you had with him. They're not even in the same universe. I know. I traced the line of his collarbone, the definition of muscle and bone, the slight scar near his shoulder that had a story I'd heard over wine in Santorini. But I can't help thinking about how different everything is now. How I used to beg for scraps of affection, and now I have this. This, he repeated, his hand coming up to cup my face. You have all of me, Sienna. Every dark corner, every complicated piece, every part of myself I thought I'd buried too deep to ever share with someone. I don't deserve you, I whispered. You deserve everything, he corrected. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know it. My phone buzzed from somewhere on the floor. Probably still in my purse from last night. I ignored it, but it kept buzzing, insistent, annoying. Answer it, Damien said. It might be important. I reluctantly disentangled myself from him and found my phone. There were 17 missed messages, 12 from numbers I didn't recognize, 5 from people I used to know. I opened the first one from an old Columbia friend, Melissa, who'd ghosted me after the gala incident. Melissa, Sienna, I saw what happened at the wedding. I'm so sorry for how I treated you. Can we talk? Then another from Ashley, who'd been part of our friend group. Ashley, you looked amazing last night. I can't believe I listened to Georgina's version of events. Coffee sometime? I showed the messages to Damien, who read them with a slight smile. They want back in, he observed. Now that they see you've landed on your feet. Now that they see I'm married to you, I corrected. They don't actually care about me. They care about access to your world. Smart woman. He pulled me back into bed, tucking me against his side. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said firmly. I don't need friends who only value me based on who I'm with. I need people who see me for me. And do you have those people? I thought about it, about the small circle I'd built in the past few months, about Victor who'd brought the dress last night and winked at me when he left, about Natasha who ran Damien's household and treated me like a daughter, about the life I was building that was mine, not borrowed from someone else's approval. I'm getting there, I said. It's a work in progress. My phone buzzed again, this time with a number I definitely didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. Unknown. Hi, Sienna. This is Georgina. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to apologize for last night. The champagne was an accident, I swear. Also, I was wondering if you might introduce me to some of your husband's associates. Preston's business is struggling, and I thought I didn't finish reading it, just showed it to Damien, who laughed, actually laughed, the sound rich and genuine. The audacity, he said, shaking his head. She humiliates you publicly and then asks for business favors? She's desperate, I said, and I felt nothing but pity. Preston's family money isn't what it used to be. I heard his father made some bad investments. He did. Damien's smile turned sharp. Specifically, he invested heavily in properties I acquired last month. I may have deliberately inflated the value, let him overextend himself, then pulled support at exactly the right moment to maximize damage. I sat up, looking at him with new understanding. You did that on purpose. I did. He didn't look even slightly apologetic. I told you there would be consequences for hurting you. I don't make threats I'm not willing to follow through on. Damien, relax, Malaya. He pulled me back down. I didn't do anything illegal. I just strategically withdrew support from businesses associated with the Harrington family. It's not my fault they're too leveraged to survive without it. And Preston's company will likely file for bankruptcy by the end of the quarter, he said it matter-of-factly, along with 3 of his father's holding companies and the trust fund that was supposed to secure Georgina's future. I should have been horrified, should have felt guilty, but instead I felt nothing. These were consequences of their own choices, their own cruelty. Damien had just accelerated the timeline. You're ruthless, I said. I'm protective, he corrected. There's a difference. My phone buzzed again. Another message from a different unknown number. Unknown. Mr. Volkova, this is Ashley Chen from Colombia. I hope it's okay that I got your number from a mutual friend. I wanted to apologize for my treatment of Sienna and was wondering if we might discuss some business opportunities. I recently started a marketing firm and Damien took my phone, read the message, and his smile was all teeth. They're circling like sharks now. What are you going to do? Nothing. He handed the phone back. I don't do business with people who treated my wife poorly. It's bad for my reputation. Your reputation as a ruthless mafia boss? My reputation as someone who values loyalty above all else. He pulled me on top of him, his hands settling on my waist. These people showed their true colors when they abandoned you. They don't get second chances just because circumstances changed. I kissed him, slow and deep, feeling that familiar heat build between us. Have I mentioned that I love you? Not in the last hour. His hands slid up my back. I was starting to get concerned. I love you, I said between kisses. I love your ruthlessness and your protectiveness, and the way you destroy my enemies while making me breakfast. I'm very multi-talented, he agreed, rolling us so he was above me, braced on his forearms, looking down with those dark eyes that saw everything. And I love you. I love your strength and your kindness, and the way you see the best in people even when they don't deserve it. Not everyone, I reminded him. I saw through Preston eventually. Eventually is the key word there. He kissed my neck, my collarbone, the hollow of my throat. You gave him far more chances than he deserved. I won't make that mistake again, I promised, my hands sliding into his hair. From now on, I only keep people who value me from the start, starting with me. Starting and ending with you. I pulled him down for another kiss. You're kind of all I need. We spent the rest of the morning in bed, ignoring the increasingly desperate messages from people who wanted access to our world, who wanted to rewrite their own histories of abandonment now that it was convenient for them. And I realized something profound as I lay there in Damien's arms, watching the city wake up through the windows. I didn't need their apologies or their renewed friendship or their validation. I didn't need Preston to regret losing me or Georgina to acknowledge her cruelty. I just needed this peace, this love, this life I'd built with a man who saw my value from the first moment and never once made me question it. The rest was just noise, and I was finally ready to stop listening. Chapter 6, The Last Stand.
Don't touch her again.
The charity gala was Damien's idea, a strategic move to solidify certain business relationships and remind Manhattan's elite exactly who controlled what in this city. I'd agreed to go because I was done hiding, done letting my past dictate my present, and maybe because part of me wanted to see how the social landscape had shifted now that I was Sienna Volkova instead of Preston's discarded girlfriend. The venue was the Metropolitan Museum of Art. rented out for the evening in that obscenely wealthy way that made my old scholarship student self internally cringe, Damien's hand was warm and steady on my lower back as we navigated through the crowd. I wore Alexander McQueen tonight, black silk with strategic cutouts that walked the line between elegant and dangerous. Damien had looked at me when I'd emerged from our bedroom and said simply, "You're going to cause a riot," before kissing me thoroughly enough to smudge my lipstick. "Remind me why we're here?" I murmured as another overly friendly businessman approached to shake Damien's hand and stare at me like I was an acquisition he was considering. "Because I need to be seen." Damien's thumb traced circles on my hip. "And because you need to show this city that you're not the girl they dismissed, you're the woman they should have valued. I don't need their validation." "I know." His eyes met mine, dark and proud. "But they need to see what they lost. There's a difference." Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the ambient noise. "Sienna." Preston stood a few feet away, and he looked terrible. Not physically. He was still objectively attractive in his tuxedo, but there was something desperate in his eyes. Something hunted, I'd heard through the social grapevine, that his family's financial troubles were accelerating, that his father was scrambling to save what was left of their empire. "Preston!" I kept my voice neutral, professional, the same tone I'd use with any acquaintance I had no interest in engaging with. "Can we talk? Privately?" His eyes flicked to Damien, then back to me. "Please?" Damien's hand tightened infinitesimally on my waist, not controlling but questioning, leaving the choice to me. I could feel the predatory stillness in him, the barely leashed violence ready to deploy if I gave the word. "Anything you need to say to my wife, you can say in front of me." Damien's voice was pleasant, polite even, but there was steel underneath. Preston ran a hand through his hair, and I noticed his fingers were shaking slightly. "I need 5 minutes, Sienna. Please, for old time's sake." For old time's sake. Like those times had been good. Like I should feel some obligation to the man who'd systematically destroyed my self-worth for 3 years. "Fine," I said, and felt Damien's surprise. 5 minutes. I stepped away from Damien's protective presence, following Preston to a quieter alcove near the Egyptian wing. I could feel Damien's eyes on me the entire time, tracking my movement, ready to intervene if needed, but also trusting me to handle this myself. Preston turned to face me once we were alone, and up close I could see the cracks in his polished exterior, the dark circles under his eyes barely concealed by expensive concealer, the tension in his jaw, the slight tremor in his hands. "You look beautiful," he said, and it sounded like an accusation. "Thank you." I didn't return the compliment, didn't offer him anything. "I made a mistake." He said it all in a rush, like he'd been practicing. "Sienna, I was an idiot. I let you go, and it was the worst decision of my life." I waited, said nothing, gave him nothing to work with. "Georgina, she's..." He stopped, started again. "It's not what I thought it would be. She's not you. Nobody is you. Preston, I want you back." He cut me off, stepping closer, and I could smell the whiskey on his breath, the desperation rolling off him in waves. "I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking anyway. We were good together. We could be good again." The laugh that escaped me was genuine surprise. "You can't be serious." "I am." He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "Sienna, please. I know I hurt you, but people make mistakes. We could start over. I could be better this time." "Better." I repeated the word like I was tasting it. "You want to be better now. After 3 years of making me feel like I was never good enough, after the cheating, after letting Georgina humiliate me publicly after everything, now you want to be better?" "I was young. You were cruel." I cut him off, and my voice was steady, certain, powerful in a way it never had been when we were together. "You were systematically, deliberately cruel. You criticized my body, controlled my movements, diminished my dreams, and made me believe that I was lucky to have your scraps of attention." "That's not... I didn't mean..." "You meant every word." I took a step toward him now, watching him unconsciously step back. "And the worst part? I believed you. I actually believed that I needed to change myself to be worthy of you, that I needed to be smaller, quieter, less ambitious, less everything." "Sienna, but you want to know what I realized?" I smiled, and it wasn't kind. "You didn't make me smaller because I was too much. You made me smaller because you were too little. You needed me diminished because my light made your mediocrity obvious." His face flushed red. "That's not fair." "Fair?" My laugh was sharp. "You want to talk about fair? You cheated on me with my roommate, humiliated me at a public event, let your social circle erase me from existence, and now you're here asking for another chance because, what, your new life isn't working out?" Your family is losing money. Your perfect wife isn't so perfect anymore. It's not about the money. It's always about the money with you, Preston. I said it gently now, almost pitying. Or the status or the appearance. It's never about actual love or respect or partnership. It's about having the right accessories to maintain your position. And him? Preston's voice turned nasty. Damien Volkova? You think he's any different? He's a criminal, Sienna. He's dangerous and violent, and he's only with you because I saved him from a bad date and made him laugh, I interrupted. Because I see him as a person instead of a reputation? Because we actually enjoy each other's company without one of us needing to be diminished. He's using you. He chose me, I said simply. Every day he chooses me. He sees my value, celebrates my strength, encourages my dreams. He makes me feel powerful instead of small, worthy instead of grateful, loved instead of tolerated. I loved you. No, I shook my head. You loved the idea of me, the version that did what you wanted and never challenged you. But the real me, the one with opinions and ambitions and a backbone, you hated her. You tried to crush her. Preston's face crumpled slightly. I could change. I don't want you to change, I said, and meant it. I want you to leave me alone. I want you to accept that we're done, that we were done the moment you chose cruelty over kindness. I want you to move forward with your life and let me move forward with mine. But there is no but, I cut him off firmly. I am married, I am happy, I am exactly where I want to be with exactly who I want to be with, and nothing you say or do will change that. You'll regret this. His voice turned ugly. When he gets bored of you, when you realize what he really is. I know what he really is, I said calmly. He's honest about his darkness. He doesn't hide it or dress it up as love, and somehow that makes him infinitely more trustworthy than you ever were. I turned to walk away, but Preston's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop me. Sienna, let go of my wife. Damien's voice cut through the space like a blade. He'd crossed the room silently, and now stood a few feet away, every line of his body radiating controlled violence. His eyes were flat and cold, in a way I'd never seen directed at me. This was the Mafia boss, the dangerous man who'd built an empire on fear. Preston dropped my wrist like it burned. We were just talking. You were touching her without permission. Damien stepped closer, and Preston automatically backed up. That's a mistake. Damien, I put my hand on his arm, feeling the tension vibrating through him. It's fine. I handled it. I know you did. His eyes never left Preston, but his hand came up to cover mine on his arm. I watched you destroy him verbally. It was beautiful. But now he's touched you, and that requires a different response. I didn't mean, Preston stammered. You never mean anything, Damien said conversationally. You didn't mean to destroy Sienna's self-worth. Didn't mean to cheat. Didn't mean to humiliate her. You're a walking collection of things you didn't mean, but absolutely intended. Who the hell do you think you are? I'm the man who's going to ensure you never speak to my wife again. Damien's smile was all teeth. I'm the man who's already destroyed your family's financial future, who owns the mortgage on your father's estate, who controls the board seats your father thought were secure. Preston went pale. You, what? Chapter 7, The Revelation.
Remove your hand.
Did you think the financial troubles were coincidental? Damien's laugh was cold. I've been systematically dismantling everything the Harrington family built, and I'm just getting started. That's illegal. Prove it, Damien challenged. Every move I've made has been completely legal, just strategically devastating. I'm very good at finding the pressure points, and your family has so many. Damien, I said quietly, not because I disagreed, but because I could see Preston was on the verge of either crying or throwing a punch, both of which would be embarrassing for everyone. You're right, Malaya. Damien's tone softened infinitesimally when addressing me. He's not worth the effort of continued destruction. He's already destroyed himself. He turned his back on Preston dismissively, his arm sliding around my waist as we walked away. I could hear Preston's ragged breathing behind us, could imagine the tears of frustration and humiliation. I should have felt guilty, should have felt something other than relief, but I didn't. This was closure, real closure, the kind where you walk away knowing you made the right choice. We'd barely made it back to the main gallery when Ashley and Melissa materialized from the crowd, both looking stunning in designer gowns that probably cost more than my college tuition. Their smiles were bright and predatory. Sienna! Ashley air-kissed near my cheek. You look amazing. We were just talking about you. Were you? I kept my tone neutral. We feel terrible about losing touch, Melissa chimed in, but her eyes were on Damien, assessing, calculating. We should get lunch, catch up properly. I'm quite busy, I said politely, but thank you for the offer. Oh, I'm sure you could make time. Ashley stepped closer to Damien, her hand landing on his arm in a gesture that was supposed to look casual, but was clearly calculated. Maybe we could all get together? I'd love to hear about your business, Mr. Volkova. I find powerful men so fascinating. Damien looked down at her hand on his arm, like it was a particularly offensive insect. His expression was neutral, but I could see the disgust in his eyes, the cold dismissal that made Ashley's smile falter slightly. Remove your hand, he said quietly. I'm sorry. Ashley's laugh was nervous now. Your hand, Damien repeated, his accent thicker now, more pronounced. Remove it before I have someone remove it for you. Ashley snatched her hand back, her face flushing red. Melissa took an unconscious step backward. I don't know what social circles you operated in before, Damien continued, his arm tightening around my waist possessively. But in my world, touching someone's husband without permission is considered a grave insult. I didn't mean, Ashley started. You meant exactly what you did, Damien cut her off. You saw my wife, saw her value, saw what you missed when you abandoned her, and decided to try and claim some of that for yourselves by proximity. That's not... It is precisely that. His eyes were cold. You ignored Sienna when she needed friends, chose social convenience over loyalty, and now you want back in because she's married to me. Melissa found her voice. We made mistakes. You made choices, I said, finally speaking up. You chose to believe Georgina's version of events without asking for mine, chose to ghost me rather than risk your social standing, chose comfort over friendship. We were wrong, Ashley tried. You were, I agreed. But that doesn't obligate me to give you another chance. We could be valuable to you. Melissa's mask slipped slightly, revealing the calculation underneath. We know everyone. We could introduce you around, help you navigate. Navigate what exactly? Damien's laugh was devoid of humor. My wife doesn't need your help. She doesn't need your connections or your social maneuvering. She has me. She has my world. She has everything she could possibly need. His hand slid from my waist to my hip, pulling me closer against him in a gesture that was blatantly possessive. The message was clear. She's mine, she's valued, and you have nothing to offer. Besides, Damien continued, his eyes never leaving the two women who were now looking progressively more uncomfortable. I don't do business with disloyal people. If you abandoned her once, you'd do it again the moment it became convenient, and I don't tolerate disloyalty in any form. We weren't disloyal to you, Ashley tried. You were disloyal to the woman I love! Damien's voice dropped lower, more dangerous, which makes it personal, and I take personal matters very seriously. The threat was implicit but unmistakable. These women had hurt what was his, and there would be consequences. I think we should go. Melissa grabbed Ashley's arm, both of them backing away. Excellent idea, Damien said pleasantly. And ladies, if I see either of you approach my wife again, at any event, for any reason, I will ensure that every door in this city closes to you. Every social connection you have will mysteriously evaporate. Every opportunity will disappear. Do we understand each other? They nodded, pale and shaken, and practically fled across the gallery. I turned to look at Damien, who was watching them go with satisfaction. That was intense. They touched me without permission, he said simply. And they hurt you. Both are unforgivable. You didn't have to threaten them. Yes. He turned to face me fully, his hand coming up to cup my face. I did, because you are mine, Sienna. Not in the ownership sense, but in the chosen sense. And anyone who hurts you, who dismisses you, who treats you as anything less than extraordinary, will answer to me. My fierce protector, I smiled despite everything. Always, he kissed me, right there in the middle of the gala, deep and claiming and absolutely devastating. When we broke apart, I was breathless, and he was smiling that dangerous smile that made my knees weak. Can we leave yet? I asked. Not quite. His expression shifted slightly. There's one more person who wants to speak with you. He gestured across the room, and my stomach dropped. Georgina stood near the bar, her hand resting on her still flat stomach in a gesture I recognized from every pregnancy announcement I'd ever seen. Oh no, I breathed. Oh yes, Damien's smile was grim. She's been making the rounds all night, telling anyone who'll listen that she's pregnant with Preston's child and that you somehow ruined her marriage. That's insane. That's desperate, he corrected. And she's about to try and use that pregnancy to manipulate the situation, to make you look like the villain in her story. What do we do? We? His smile widened. Nothing. You, however, are going to show her exactly who Sienna Volkova is. Georgina spotted us looking and started walking over. Her expression was a carefully crafted mixture of sadness and determination. She'd clearly rehearsed this. Sienna, she said as she approached, her hand never leaving her stomach. I'm so glad you're here. I wanted to tell you personally. Tell me what, Georgina? I kept my voice neutral. I'm pregnant, she announced, loud enough for nearby people to hear. Preston and I are having a baby. Despite everything that's happened, despite all the challenges, we're building a family. The implication was clear. They were moving forward, building something real, while I was, what exactly? A trophy wife to a dangerous man? Congratulations, I said simply. Georgina blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Thank you. I hope you and Preston find happiness, I continued, and I meant it. I hope you build a beautiful life together, and that your child grows up loved and secure. We will. Georgina's smile was triumphant now. We're going to be so happy, a real family, not like what? I interrupted gently. Not like a marriage based on actual partnership and respect. Not like a relationship where both people see each other's value. Her smile faltered. You think you won something, I said quietly, so only she could hear. You think taking Preston, marrying him, having his baby, you think that means you beat me somehow. I did. No, I shook my head. You got exactly what you wanted, and I got exactly what I wanted. The difference is that I wanted something real, while you wanted something that looked good. Preston loves me. Maybe he does, I allowed. Or maybe he loves the idea of you, the way you fit into his world, the way you make him look good to his family and friends. But Georgina, that's not the same as being truly seen and valued for who you are. She was silent, her hand still on her stomach, but her expression less certain now. I hope your baby gives you everything you're looking for, I said genuinely. I hope it brings you joy and fulfillment and all the things you thought marrying Preston would bring. It will, but her voice was small now. Then we both got what we wanted, I smiled. And there's no reason for any more drama or manipulation or attempts to make each other feel bad about our choices. I started to walk away, but Georgina's voice stopped me. Are you really happy with him? She asked, and for the first time she sounded genuinely curious rather than calculated. With Damien? I turned back, looked across the room to where Damien stood watching us, ready to intervene if needed, but trusting me to handle this. His eyes met mine across the distance, and I felt that familiar warmth. That certainty. I'm happier than I ever knew I could be, I said honestly. He sees me, all of me, and loves what he sees. He makes me feel powerful and valued and absolutely certain that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Georgina's eyes filled with tears, and I realized with sudden clarity that she wasn't happy. The pregnancy, the marriage, the perfect life she'd stolen, none of it was giving her what she thought it would. I'm sorry, she said quietly, for everything. You deserved better than how we treated you. Yes, I agreed simply. I did, and now I have it. I walked away then, back to Damien, who pulled me immediately into his arms. That was gracious, he observed. That was honest, I corrected. She's miserable, Preston's miserable, and no amount of revenge or cruelty on my part will change that. They made their choices, and now they're living with them. And you're living with yours. Damien's hand found my face, tilting it up toward him. Best choice I ever made, I whispered. He kissed me, and I felt the last pieces of my old life fall away. I wasn't Preston's ex-girlfriend anymore, wasn't the girl who'd been humiliated and dismissed. I was Sienna Volkova, and that was more than enough. Now, can we leave? I asked against his lips. Now, he agreed, taking my hand. We can definitely leave. As we walked out of the gala, past the whispers and the stares and the people who were still trying to figure out what had just happened, I felt nothing but peace. The past was over, the drama was done, and all that was left was the future I was building with a man who saw my worth from the very beginning. Chapter 8. Forever starts now.
Forever starts now.
The penthouse was silent when we arrived, just the soft hum of the city below and the sound of our breathing as Damien locked the door behind us. I kicked off my heels immediately, the expensive McQueen pooling slightly at my feet. now that I wasn't elevated, and turned to find him watching me with an expression that made my breath catch. "What?" I asked softly. "You." He crossed the distance between us in 2 strides, his hands framing my face. "You were magnificent tonight. The way you handled Preston, the way you dismissed those women, the grace you showed Georgina even when she didn't deserve it." "I just told the truth," I shrugged, but my heart was racing at the intensity in his eyes. "You showed them who you really are," he corrected, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. "Strong, compassionate, completely unshakable. You didn't need me to fight your battles. You fought them yourself, and won decisively." "I did need you, though," I admitted, my hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling his heartbeat under my palms. Not to fight for me, but to be there, to remind me that I have somewhere to come home to when the fighting is done. His expression softened into something tender and fierce all at once. "Always, Malaya, you will always have me to come home to." He kissed me then, slow and deep and thorough, his hands sliding from my face down my neck, across my shoulders, finding the zipper of my dress and lowering it with deliberate care. The fabric whispered to the floor, and I stood there, in just my underwear, watching his eyes darken as they traced every curve. "Beautiful," he breathed. "You're so beautiful it makes my chest hurt." "Then stop looking," I challenged, reaching for his bow tie, untying it with fingers that trembled slightly, "and start touching." He did, and the world narrowed to just sensation, just the slide of skin against skin, just the heat building between us as we moved toward the bedroom, shedding clothes and inhibitions in equal measure. The sex was different this time, not the frantic passion of our first nights together or the claiming intensity of recent weeks. This was something deeper, more profound. We moved together like we'd been doing this for years instead of months, anticipating each other's needs, reading each other's bodies like favorite books. "I love you," I gasped as he moved inside me, his forehead pressed against mine, our breathing synchronized. "Yada be'al yubliu," he responded in Russian, the words rough and reverent, more than I thought I was capable of loving anything. After, we lay tangled together in the massive bed, the city lights painting patterns across our skin through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my back, and I felt more at peace than I'd ever been. "Marry me again," he said suddenly. I propped myself up on my elbow to look at him. "We're already married." "Properly this time," he smiled. "With your family there, with friends who actually care about you, with all the traditions and ceremony. I want to give you the wedding you deserve, not a rushed chapel in Santorini." "I loved our Santorini wedding," I protested. "So did I." His hand came up to cup my face. "But I want the world to see me choose you. I want everyone who ever made you feel small to watch me promise you forever in front of hundreds of witnesses." My eyes stung with unexpected tears. "You really want that?" "I want everything with you," he said simply. "The big wedding, the quiet mornings, the fights and the makeups, the mundane and the extraordinary. I want a life, Sienna, a real life, not just an empire." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that before you, I was just existing, accumulating wealth and power because I didn't know what else to do with myself." He pulled me closer. "But with you, I want to build something that matters. I want kids who grow up knowing they're loved unconditionally. I want lazy Sundays and family dinners and all the things I never thought I'd want. Kids?" My voice came out slightly strangled. "Eventually." He smiled at my expression. "When you're ready, no pressure, I'm in no rush. I just want you to know that this isn't temporary for me. This is forever." I kissed him, pouring everything I felt into it, all the love and gratitude and overwhelming certainty that I'd found exactly where I belonged. "I want that too," I whispered against his lips. "All of it. The wedding, the kids, the life. I want forever with you." "Yeah?" His smile was brilliant. "Yeah," I confirmed, "though I have conditions." "Of course you do," he laughed. "Tell me." "I want to finish my PhD," I said firmly. "I want my own career, my own identity beyond being your wife." "Done. I'll fund whatever program you want. I'll apply for scholarships like everyone else," I countered. "I don't need your money for that." "Stubborn woman. You love it." "I really do," he admitted. "What else?" "I want us to be partners," I said seriously. "Real partners, where we make decisions together, where my opinion matters as much as yours." "It already does," he said. "But yes, partners, equals, whatever you want to call it. And I want you to try," I touched his face gently, "to be less ruthless, to find ways to build your empire that don't involve destroying other people." He was quiet for a long moment. "I can't promise to be a different person." "I'm not asking you to be different," I clarified. "I'm asking you to try, to consider that maybe there are other ways, that power doesn't always have to come from fear." "For you," he said finally, "I'll try. I can't promise I'll always succeed. There are things in my world that require a certain level of ruthlessness, but I'll try to find the line between necessary and excessive. That's all I'm asking." I kissed him softly. "Just try." We talked for hours after that, about the future we wanted to build, about the wedding we'd plan, about the life we'd create together, and somewhere around dawn I realized something profound. I'd spent 3 years with Preston feeling like I was auditioning for a role I'd never quite land, like I was one mistake away from being replaced. But with Damien, I felt chosen, not because I was perfect, but because he saw all my imperfections and loved me anyway. "What are you thinking?" Damien asked, his fingers still tracing patterns on my skin. "I'm thinking that I never knew love could feel like this," I admitted. "Safe and exciting at the same time. Peaceful, but never boring." "That's because you'd never actually been in love before," he said with typical Damien arrogance. "You were in love with the idea of Preston, with what being with him represented, but you were never in love with who he actually was." "And you?" I challenged. "Have you been in love before?" "Never," he said without hesitation. "I've had relationships, connections, but nothing that came close to this. You're it for me, Sienna, the first and the last." "No pressure," I joked, but my heart was soaring. "All the pressure," he countered, rolling me beneath him, "because I plan on spending the rest of my life making sure you never doubt how loved you are." He made good on that promise, showed me with his hands and mouth and body exactly how loved I was, and as the sun rose over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I felt the last pieces of my old self fall away completely. I wasn't the girl who'd been humiliated at a gala anymore, wasn't Preston's discarded girlfriend or Georgina's victim. I was just Sienna, loved fiercely and completely by a man who saw my value from the very beginning and never once made me question it. "I love you," I said, as we lay tangled together, exhausted and content. "I love you more," he responded, that competitive edge even in affection. "Not possible. Extremely possible." He pulled me closer. "I love you more than power. More than money, more than this entire empire I've built." "Damien, you asked me once what I'd built all this for," he interrupted, "and I didn't have an answer, but I do now." "What's the answer?" "You," he said simply. "I built it all so that when I finally found you, I'd have something worthy to offer. I'd have the power to protect you, the resources to give you everything, the empire to lay at your feet." "I don't want an empire at my feet," I protested. "I know." His smile was soft. "You just want me, and that's why you deserve everything." We fell asleep as the city woke up, wrapped in each other and the certainty of forever. And when I woke up hours later to find Damien watching me with that expression that still made my breath catch, I knew with absolute certainty that this was my happily ever after. Not because it was perfect. We'd have fights and struggles and moments of doubt. Not because he was some idealized hero. He was still dangerous and ruthless and morally complicated, and not because I'd been rescued or saved or completed by him, but because we'd chosen each other, flaws and all, darkness and light, strength and vulnerability, and in that choice we'd found something real, something lasting, something that made all the pain and humiliation of the past worth it, because it had led me here, to him, to us, to this life we were building together. "Good morning, Mrs. Volkova," Damien murmured, his hand sliding up my bare back. "Good morning, Mr. Volkova," I responded, unable to stop smiling. "Ready to start forever?" I looked at this complicated, dangerous, surprisingly tender man who'd given me everything I never knew I needed, and felt my heart expand with certainty. "With you?" I kissed him softly. "Absolutely." And as we lay there in the morning light, Manhattan spreading out below us full of possibility and promise, I realized that this was what victory looked like. Not in humiliating the people who'd hurt me, not in proving them wrong, but in finding someone who made me forget they existed at all. Preston and Georgina could have their miserable marriage and their desperate attempts at happiness. Ashley and Melissa could have their empty social climbing, and I would have this real love, real partnership, real life with someone who saw my worth from day one and never once made me question it. That was the real revenge, the real triumph, not caring anymore, not needing their validation or their regret or their acknowledgement, just living well, loving deeply, and building a future that had nothing to do with my past. "I'm so glad you yelled at me in that airport," Damien said suddenly. I laughed, the sound bright and free. "Best temper tantrum I ever had." "Best day of my life," he corrected, pulling me on top of him. "The day a beautiful, furious woman called me an expensive jerk and had no idea she'd just met her future husband." "So arrogant." "So accurate," he countered, his hands settling on my waist. "Admit it, you were halfway in love with me even then." "I was halfway to murdering you," I corrected. "Same thing," he grinned, and I couldn't argue because maybe it was. Maybe love always started with a little bit of chaos, a little bit of fury, a collision of two people who had no business finding each other but did anyway. And maybe the best stories weren't about perfect meet-cutes or love at first sight. Maybe they were about yelling at strangers in airports and finding something real in the mess. "Forever starts now," I said, echoing his earlier words. "Forever started the moment you walked into my life," he corrected, pulling me down for a kiss that tasted like promises and possibility. "Everything before was just waiting." And as we lost ourselves in each other again, the past finally, completely, absolutely behind us, I knew he was right. This was forever, messy and complicated and absolutely perfect, and I wouldn't change a single thing about how we got here. Not the heartbreak that led me to Greece, not the humiliation that made me strong, not even the pain that taught me my worth, because all of it, every terrible moment, had been a path leading me exactly where I needed to be. Home, in the arms of a dangerous man with a surprisingly soft heart, building a future that was ours alone.
4 hidden Lena fun facts about this story. 1. The ruined dress scene was the emotional turning point. Notice, Georgina tried to humiliate Sienna in the exact same way she was humiliated in the past publicly. But this time, Sienna had someone who didn't just defend her, he made her shine. Even more. The new dress being more beautiful than the ruined one equals, she always comes out better after every attack. 2. Damien never used the last name Harrington even once. He always said Preston or your ex. Refusing the surname was refusing to give importance to their family legacy. He literally erased the power of the Harrington name from the narrative. 3. Georgina's pregnancy was mentioned but never developed, because it doesn't matter. Subtle Easter egg. Sienna genuinely wished her happiness and moved on. The pregnancy stopped being manipulation the moment Sienna stopped giving it power. Georgina was left talking to herself. 4. Milaya means darling, beloved in Russian, but it has layers. Damien uses it only with Sienna, never with anyone else in the entire story. Even in moments of anger or tension with others, he is cold and formal. With her, there's always a Milaya that reveals vulnerability. It's his code word for "you are my person." Guys, writing Sienna and Damien felt like watching someone rise from the ashes in real time. From the very first moment, I knew this wouldn't be a cheap revenge story or a show him what he lost kind of plot. That's far too shallow. This is a story about rediscovering self-worth. What burned inside me in the best way was creating the journey of a woman who didn't need to humiliate anyone to prove her value. She simply lived so well that the comparison became inevitable. Sienna didn't scream, "Look how much better I am." She quietly transformed into someone so radiant that everyone realized their mistake on their own. And Damien? Oh, Damien was delicious to build. He's dangerous, morally gray, capable of destroying empires, but with her, he's soft, protective, genuinely in love. The duality of a man who kills without blinking but melts when she smiles. Chef's kiss. He didn't save her. He saw her, and that made all the difference. This story is for every woman who has ever felt not enough. Spoiler, you were always enough. You were just with the wrong people. Lena, in love with happy endings that are earned, not just luck. Until the next story, darling.